Hey everyone, I hope you're having a magnificent day today. Today we have 7-4 reteaching, and the objective for this lesson is to divide a decimal by a whole number. So I want to talk about what the standard procedures are for dividing a decimal. And remember, the standard procedures is just kind of a fancy way of saying the normal way of doing things, the normal steps that you're going to take. If I were you, I would be writing these things down on my math notebook right now so I can look back to them if I ever get stuck. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do when your dividend is a decimal, so in this case, the 16.8 is my dividend, and that has a decimal point in it. The first thing you're going to do is take that decimal and move it straight up, just like that red arrow shows. It's going to go straight up into my quotient, just kind of very similar to when you're adding and subtracting decimals. You bring it straight down into your sum or difference. Same kind of process here, go straight up into your quotient. Once you've done that, then you can just divide these numbers normally. So you can even think of this problem as 168 divided by 4. So you're just going to divide it out normally because you've already put your decimal point up there. That is covered. So if you're looking at this problem, the blue problem over on the right, you're going to look at 4, how many times that can go into 1. Well, it doesn't fit. So we're going to look into 16. Goes in 4 times. We get 16 when we multiply 4 by 4. That comes out even, gives us a 0. Then we're going to bring down that 8, and 4 can go into 8 2 times. So if you're looking at this problem, notice that the digits in my blue problem over on the right are the exact same as the digits in my red and white problem on the left. Notice the only difference is that I've already brought that decimal point up. And the other thing I want you to take note of is once you have brought your decimal up and you've divided normally, you are not going to move that decimal. Multiplication, we kind of multiplied normally and then we moved the decimal. But for division, and when you have a decimal dividend, you are not going to move that decimal point in your quotient. This is going to be your final answer. Okay, so make sure you have this written down so you can look back at it at any time whenever you need to, and we'll go ahead and move on to our next problem. So here we have a word problem. Admission to an amusement park costs $107.25 for 3 friends. If the price was the same for each person, how much did they pay? So following the steps that we outlined on the first slide, I'm going to do the very first thing. I'm going to move this decimal straight up and put it into my quotient right now. And then I'm just going to pretend like that decimal isn't even there. So I'm going to divide like I normally would. So 3 can't go into 1. So I'm going to look how many times 3 can go into 10. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. And that's as close as I can get without going over. When I subtract these numbers, I get 1. Bring down the 7. It's probably a good idea to be doing this with me in your math notebook. Now I have 17. How many times can 3 go into 17? I'm going to go ahead and say 5. That's going to get me 15. I hope I don't run out of room. So when we subtract these two numbers, I get 2. We're just going to keep going. We're going to skip right over that decimal because we've already taken care of it. It's already in our quotient. We're going to go ahead and bring that second 2 down. Okay, so 22. 3 goes into 22 7 times. Looks like we might have to carry this work over. 22 minus 21 is, well, let's see, is 1. Okay, so let's move this over a little bit. And then we're going to bring this 5 down, and we get 15. Well, 3 can go into 15 evenly 5 times. So then when I multiply 3 times 5 and I subtract, I'm going to get 0, and I've got my final answer. Notice I am not doing anything with that decimal point. I already took care of it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. $35.75 is going to be my final answer. We're done. That's it. And I could always check this. I could always double check by, I could multiply these two numbers out. Or I could look at an estimate. I could do, well, let's see what a well, wait, I could do 100 divided by 3. I could do 100, 20 divided by 3. That's kind of a stretch. But you could find a compatible number and figure out an estimate and figure out whether or not your quotient is reasonable. Okay? So the problem we have here, 196 divided by 32, you may notice that they're both whole numbers. We're going to talk about what we do, what we're, as fifth graders, as big grown-up fifth graders, what we're going to start doing with problems like this. Instead of just putting remainder 553, we're going to figure out in decimal form what our remainder would be. So let's go ahead and divide this out. I noticed that 32 cannot go into 1 and 32 cannot go into 19. So I need to figure out how many times 32 can go into 196. So I'm going to think of an estimate first. I'm going to round 32 to 30, and I'm going to think of a number that's close to 196. That's probably a multiple. So let's do 180. Divided by 30 and see how many times that'll fit. So if I do 18 divided by 3, I get 6. Then I'm going to go ahead and cancel out these zeros because I have 1 0 in each of the numbers, the dividend and the divisor. So we're going to get about 6 times. So now I want to figure out what 32 times 6 is. Let's go ahead and multiply this out. It's kind of funky 6. We get 192. Ooh, pretty close. So we're going to go ahead and put our 6 up in our quotient. It's going to go over this 6 because we divided into 196. When we subtract these two numbers, we're going to get a remainder 4. Now, back in the old days, before you were super smart fifth graders, you would have just put remainder 4 there. But we know quite a bit about decimals, and we're awesome and smart and borderline geniuses. So what we're going to start doing is, instead of just calling it remainder 4 and being done, we're going to put a decimal point and a 0. Notice that this 0 is a fluff 0. It's not changing the value of my number at all. It's just giving me a longer number to divide into. Now you want to make sure when you do this, when you add the decimal 0, that you're then following the procedures for dividing decimals. You're going to put that decimal point straight up into your quotient. Because now I have a decimal point, whereas in the beginning I didn't. Then we're going to continue dividing like we have been. We're going to bring this 0 down. 32 can go into 40 one time. When you subtract these, you're going to get 8. I still have a remainder, so I'm going to add another 0, and I'm going to bring that 0 down. So I'm going to get 80. 32 can go into 82 times. We're going to get 64. Man, I'm going to run out of room again. When we subtract these two, we get 16, and then we're going to add another 0, just like we have been. Now we need to figure out how many times 32 can go into 160. We'll look over to the right. We found that 32 times 6 is 192. So let's see if we subtracted 1, if we would get 160. And we sure do. So that means that 5 times 32 is going to get us 160. So we're going to add that 5. When we subtract 160 from 160, we're going to get 0. So this is going to be our final answer. Okay? We're moving past the step of just putting remainder 4. And we're actually going to solve for the decimal that remainder 4 is representing. So our final answer here is 6 and 125 thousandths. Okay, this is the big fancy fifth grade way of doing things.